Don't be so harsh, darling. She's just trying to earn a tip. Cassie's jaw tightened, but she continued pouring the water, her movements deliberate and fluid. Don't engage. Be a ghost. She filled the last glass and began to step back, her spine ramrod straight. Dignity was her only shield. You there? Preston's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. You missed a spot. Cassie stopped, turning. Sir. He pointed a manicured finger at his water glass. There, on the pristine white tablecloth, was a minuscule droplet of water. It was no larger than the head of a pin. Right there, he said, a smirk playing on his lips. You spilled. Sloppy work. Tonight was the annual St. Jude Children's Foundation charity gala. It was where New York's more wealthiest gathered to write checks. Cassie had worked enough of these events to know the script. The later it got, the louder and less coherent the conversations became, punctuated by insincere smiles and greetings. Her manager, a kind but perpetually worried woman named Genevieve Peterson, had briefed her earlier. Keep your chin up, Riley. Don't let them see you sweat. Just be polite, be efficient, and whatever you do, don't make waves. Make waves? Cassie didn't have the energy. Her feet were already screaming in her service shoes, and her mind wasn't on the job. It was on the rejection letter that had arrived this morning. It was the third one this month. The Donovan Academy of Performing Arts Grant Committee regrets to inform you. She knew the words by heart. 4 years. It had been 4 years since the accident. 4 years since she'd traded her dance shoes for a serving tray, shelving her Broadway dreams to cover rent and her mother's medical bills. Cassie gave her head a slight shake, trying to clear the thoughts. This wasn't the time for a pity party. She had a job to do. She grabbed a pitcher of chilled water, checked her tray, and made her way toward one of the largest tables in the center of the ballroom. It belonged to Preston Montgomery III, a wealthy heir known for his extravagant parties and arrogant demeanor. Seated beside him was his fiancée, Veronica, a beautiful woman with a glacial smile. As Cassie approached, she caught Preston's voice, booming and self-assured. I don't see why my father insists on funding these things. Look at this waitstaff. They move like little automatons. Veronica let out a soft laugh, a delicate sound, devoid of any real warmth. Don't be so harsh, darling. She's just trying to earn a tip. Heat flooded Cassie's cheeks. Breathe. Just walk away. She gave a professional dip of her head and turned to leave, her heart hammering against her ribs with a mix of anger and humiliation. She moved quickly through the thickening crowd, trying to escape the toxic bubble around Preston's table. Her eyes were fixed on the service entrance, her safe haven. And that's when disaster struck. A guest, deep in conversation and laughing loudly, took an oblivious step backward without looking. His shoulder slammed into Cassie's elbow, a single moment of lost balance. The silver tray in her hand tilted violently. A single glass of red wine, the last item on her tray, flew through the air in a grim arc before it fell. Smash! The sharp crack of breaking glass sliced through the conversational buzz. The deep red liquid pooled like a wound on the expensive carpet, inches from the polished leather toe of Preston Montgomery III's shoe. A sudden hush fell over the immediate area. All eyes snapped to Cassie, who stood frozen, the empty tray still in her hands. And then Preston's voice rang out, loud and clear, dripping with malicious glee. He had the audience he craved. How clumsy. I told you, they train these people like puppets, but sometimes they can't even manage the basics. Veronica, seizing the moment, added with a sweetly venomous tone. Perhaps she should have stayed home and practiced holding things. Every whisper, every curious and judgmental glance pinned Cassie to the spot. She felt herself shrink, exposed and utterly alone. But as she looked up and saw the smug satisfaction on Preston's face, a spark of defiance ignited within her. Instead of cowering, she simply met his gaze. Preston noticed the shift. Her silence wasn't fear, It was a challenge. This irritated him even more. He didn't like being looked at that way by the help. He took a step toward her, his voice carrying across the silent room. "It seems you're not just clumsy, but you have an attitude problem as well," Preston said. Then he paused, his eyes narrowing as if in recognition. Another smile, a knowing one, crept across his face. "Wait a minute. I know who you are. Cassandra Riley." Cassie flinched. She never expected him to know her full name. Preston continued, his voice laced with contempt. "Donovan Academy graduate, specialized in Argentine tango, a rising star once upon a time, and now serving drinks and breaking glasses." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. This was getting much more interesting. "I have a proposition for you, little dancer," Preston said, pulling a thick wad of cash from his jacket pocket. He fanned out the $100 bills slowly, ostentatiously. "This is $10,000. He held out the money. "Dance one tango with me, right here, right now. If you can make it through the entire dance without a single misstep, the money is yours. Call it a tip." He paused, his smile turning cruel. "But if you fail, even once, you're fired on the spot. And everyone here will know you're nothing but a failure." The cruel offer hung in the air. This wasn't an opportunity, it was a trap, designed to humiliate her in front of everyone. Cassie stared at the cash. $10,000. Her first thought was a single word: Mom. That money could cover her mother's medical bills for 2 years. No more sleepless nights worrying about the cost. But then she met Preston's gaze and saw the sneer. He thought he could buy anything, including her dignity. He wanted to make her his entertainment, and in that moment, Cassie made her choice. She wouldn't do this for the money. She would do this for herself. She lifted her chin, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "All right," she said, her voice perfectly steady. "I'll dance with you." Cassie took a deep breath. That one breath seemed to banish all her fear. Her eyes, which had been downcast, now lifted, holding not the anxiety of a waitress, but the calm, powerful focus of an artist. Genevieve, her manager, pushed frantically through the silent crowd, a panicked expression on her face. "My God, what are you doing?" she whispered urgently, tugging at Cassie's sleeve. "Don't be a fool. He just wants to make a spectacle of you. Just apologize. We'll clean this up. Don't let him destroy you." Cassie simply gave a small shake of her head, her eyes never leaving Preston. She placed a reassuring hand on Genevieve's arm. "I have to do this," she said, her voice soft but firm. Without giving Genevieve a chance to argue, Cassie turned back to her task. She gently set her silver tray aside. She carefully folded the white apron, the symbol of her station, and placed it neatly upon the tray. Each movement was slow and deliberate. Finally, she bent down, unhurried, and unlaced the clumsy, unflattering service shoes that had been torturing her feet all night. She placed them neatly beside the tray. She stood in her black-stockinged feet, her heels settling lightly on the floor. Her posture transformed instantly. Her back straightened further, her shoulders opened, and she seemed to grow taller. She was no longer the small waitress, but a dancer preparing to take her stage. A hush fell over the ballroom. The whispers had died. Everyone, from the wealthy guests to the other staff members, was holding their breath. They recognized this wasn't just a dare, it was theater. Genevieve retreated back into the crowd, her hands clasped over her mouth in dread, but now there was something else in her eyes. Awe. She was witnessing Cassie's metamorphosis right before her. The orchestra, after a nod from the event organizer, began to play a classic tango, La Comparsita. The powerful, passionate melody filled the air. Preston stepped forward, grabbing Cassie's hand roughly and pulling her into a dance hold. He began to lead, his steps rigid and technical, but devoid of passion. He moved as if he were trying to prove a point, every step a display of power. At first, Cassie followed. She moved lightly, allowing him to guide her. She created a stark contrast, his brute force against her fluid grace. To the onlookers, it appeared he was in complete control. Preston smirked, believing he had already won. But then, as Preston spun her in a forceful turn, intending to end with a complex move designed to throw her off balance, she didn't just follow. She used his own momentum against him, pivoting unexpectedly and seizing the lead. Suddenly, Cassie was leading. Preston's eyes widened in shock. He tried to reclaim control, but it was too late. Cassie was now moving with the confidence and power she had suppressed for 4 long years. She executed a flawless gancho, hooking her leg swiftly around his in a motion that was both dangerous and beautiful. Preston was utterly unprepared. He stumbled, losing his footing and nearly falling. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. From that moment on, the floor was hers. Cassie led Preston across the open space, no longer his partner but his puppeteer. The smugness on his face vanished, replaced first by confusion, then by a rising panic as he realized he was completely outmatched. The music swelled to its final, dramatic crescendo. Cassie led Preston into a series of rapid spins, finishing the dance in one definitive pose. She arched her back, one hand on her chest, her head held high in defiant pride. Preston was left standing alone, disoriented and humiliated in the middle of the floor. A beat of silence. Then the room erupted in applause. Not the polite clapping they'd given the speeches, but a thunderous, genuine ovation. People were on their feet. Preston, his face flushed with fury and embarrassment, strode forward. He threw the wad of $10,000 onto the floor in front of her. The bills scattered across the carpet. "Take it," he snarled. "You won." Cassie straightened up. She looked down at the money on the floor, then directly into Preston's eyes. Her gaze held no triumph, only a quiet, unshakable dignity. "I didn't dance for your money," she said, her voice clear, echoing in the silence that followed the applause. "I danced for me." With that, she turned and walked away, the crowd parting like the sea to let her pass. She left Preston Montgomery III standing alone on the dance floor with his money and his shattered pride. Cassie didn't look back. She walked straight into the service area, her heart still pounding. Genevieve rushed over, her face a mask of worry. "Riley, she began, but she didn't seem to know what to say. "I quit," Cassie said calmly. "I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused." Before Genevieve could react, Cassie grabbed her purse and walked out the back door, stepping into the cool New York night. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she could never go back. As Cassie walked away, leaving stunned silence in her wake, one person in the crowd hadn't applauded. That was Nate Crow, a photojournalist. Instead of watching, he had been working. His camera had captured the entire thing. Preston's arrogant challenge, the moment Cassie removed her service shoes, the explosive dance, and finally, the shot of her turning her back on $10,000 scattered on the floor. He knew this wasn't just party gossip, this was a story. That very night, Nate sent his article and photos to BuzzFeed News. The story went viral faster than anything he could have imagined. By the next morning, it was everywhere. People across the country were sharing it on social media. The name Cassandra Riley and the image of her standing tall after the dance became a symbol of dignity and resilience. Moved by Cassie's actions, a social media user started a GoFundMe page. It was titled, "The Tip Cassie Deserves," with the goal of raising the money she had refused. The public response was overwhelming. People didn't just want her to have the $10,000, they wanted to show her that her stand meant something. Overnight, the GoFundMe blew past the $50,000 mark. The next morning, in a lavish office on the top floor of the Montgomery Corp building, Preston Montgomery Jr. wasn't reading the morning news. He was staring at his computer screen, which displayed the company's stock price. A bright red number stood out, -4%. The office door opened and Preston walked in, looking tired but still wearing a trace of the previous night's smugness. "You wanted to see me, Father?" Preston Jr. didn't answer right away. He turned the computer monitor toward his son. Preston stared at the downward trending graph. 4%, his father said, his voice low and cold. Our stock dropped 4% overnight, all because you wanted to entertain yourself by humiliating a waitress. He pulled up another tab, revealing the BuzzFeed news article, headlined by the photo of Preston throwing the money and Cassie walking away. You've made the Montgomery name a laughingstock, Preston Jr. continued, the anger in his voice becoming more pronounced. Business partners have been calling me all morning. They're not asking about projections. They're asking about my son's disgraceful behavior. Preston opened his mouth, perhaps to make an excuse, but his father held up a hand. I don't want to hear it. From now on, you are on complete lockdown. No public appearances, no parties, no talking to the press. You will stay out of sight until I have cleaned up this mess. Just then, there was a knock on the door. An assistant entered, placed a small velvet box on Preston Jr.'s desk, and retreated silently. Preston Jr. slid the box across the desk toward his son. Preston looked at it, confused. And this, his father said, his voice devoid of emotion. Veronica's publicist just dropped it off. The engagement is off. Preston froze. He opened the box. Inside was the diamond engagement ring he had given Veronica. Now, the last shred of arrogance vanished from his face, replaced by pure, stunned defeat. He had lost everything in a single night. While the outside world was buzzing, Cassie was in her small apartment. She stared at her computer screen, unable to believe the number on the GoFundMe page. Her mother sat beside her, clutching her hand, both of them silent in the face of this sudden turn in their lives. Her phone had been ringing non-stop, mostly unknown numbers, probably reporters. She'd ignored them. But then, a call came through from a Manhattan landline. This time, for some reason, she answered. Hello? She said cautiously. Hello, am I speaking with Miss Cassandra Riley? A deep, warm voice asked on the other end. Yes, this is she, Cassie replied. My name is Gregory Bishop. Cassie froze. The name was iconic. Gregory Bishop was a legendary Broadway choreographer and director. He was her idol, the reason she had started dancing in the first place. This had to be a prank. I don't understand, she stammered. I was at the charity gala last night, he said, his tone utterly serious. I saw the entire thing. He paused for a moment, then continued, what you did on that dance floor. That wasn't just dancing. That was a performance of pure emotion and power. I haven't seen someone tell a story with their movement like that in years. Cassie held her breath, not daring to believe what she was hearing. I'm casting a new show, Gregory Bishop said. The lead role is a strong, resilient dancer, someone who's faced hardship but never lost her passion. When I saw you last night, I saw my character standing right in front of me. Tears began to trace paths down Cassie's cheeks, not tears of humiliation or anger, but of hope. I think the role is yours, Miss Riley, he concluded. I'd like to invite you to audition. The question hung in the air. It was the question Cassie had been waiting for her entire life. The night before, she had danced to reclaim her dignity, and now that same dance had opened the door to the dream she thought she had lost forever. Cassie took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady her voice through the tears of joy. Yes, Mr. Bishop, she said, her voice trembling but certain. I'll be there. When she hung up, the room was quiet except for the sound of her mother's soft sobs. She pulled Cassie into a tight embrace, and they shared the wordless moment together. The $50,000 in the GoFundMe was incredible. It would solve all of her financial burdens. But it wasn't the real victory. The real victory was this chance, the recognition she had never dared to dream of. Last night's fateful tango wasn't about getting back at Preston Montgomery. It was a declaration, a statement that no matter how life had beaten her down, no matter that she'd had to trade her point shoes for a silver tray, the dancer inside her was always there, just waiting for the music to start. And now, the world's biggest stage was waiting. In the end, this was never just about a dance. It was about dignity. Cassandra Riley's story is a powerful testament to the fact that true worth isn't measured in bank accounts or family names, but in talent, resilience, and the courage to stand up for your truth. A $10,000 challenge meant for public shaming became the catalyst that exposed rotten arrogance and reignited a dream that had been unjustly extinguished. Cassie didn't just take the stage. She took back her life, her art, and her voice, proving that the most powerful currency in the world isn't money, it's integrity. Preston Montgomery learned that the hard way, a lesson that cost his family's reputation far more than any tip ever could. If Cassie's incredible journey from a forgotten artist to an icon of defiance has moved you, please help us share her story by hitting that like button. Share this video with a reminder that it's never too late to fight for your dreams. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for more meaningful true stories.